Shalom and welcome to another edition of our Daily Bread, where we discuss the weekly Torah portion. This week's Parashat is the 8th Parashat of the book of Vayikra, also called Leviticus, and it's called Emor, which means say. And I'm Messianic Torah, and the Parashat this week starts in Leviticus 21, verse 1 through 24:23, and the half Torah is in Ezekiel or Yeheskel 44:15 through 31. And my message for 2012-13 is called Learning What is Holy. Now, just so that you know, this message here, I do two messages each week. One of them is a summary, which is a shorter version for people who just want to learn the basics of the concepts of this Torah portion and of my message. And then for the more advanced people, they can see an extended version where I go into detail in depth about all the concepts and everything. So there'll be a link, if this is on YouTube, in there to the more extended full version of this message. And if this is on Facebook, then just look for the other post. This one will say summary, and the other one will just have the title and say full. So anyway, my message this year is called Learning What is Holy. And what we see in this week's Parashat is it starts off and it talks about the priests. And it talks about being defiled as a priest, being blemished. It goes into the offerings, not being acceptable if they're defiled. And really digs into, then it goes into the holy days of what it means to be holy and how important it is. Because now we get the time that is set apart, the holy times, and we talk about the priests, the offerings, everything. And the big thing that I see that's a problem out there right now is that people don't understand holiness. People don't get that people treat things as common. They don't know how to discern between what's holy and what isn't. Tons of people worship God just the way they want to worship God. And a great example, I saw a clip of this Bible movie series from Mark Burnett, and I gotta say, I think it's just horrible. The main reason I feel it's horrible is because it's totally inaccurate. When you look at it, if we weren't going to care about the Word of God, if it was called my silly interpretation of Jesus and the Bible, then I'd say, okay, yeah, that's fine. But when you title something the Bible, right, you better make sure that it lines up and it's accurate with what the Bible is, because you're bearing a witness, and otherwise you'll be bearing a false witness. And the problem that I see with that is just scene after scene when it's showing. I mean, they're mixing verses that are in different sections of the Bible and putting them, interjecting cliches that were said by Messiah into other time frames and events that didn't have that in the text. It's part of another story. It's just making stuff up. I saw the one with Paro or Pharaoh, and he's swimming out into the in the water, and it just turns to blood, and Moses is sneakily hiding in the bushes making this happen, and he just cries out, "Moses!" like he knew that the random waters turned to blood and it must be Moses who's doing this to me, which is totally inaccurate based on what the actual text says, where it says that Moses was commanded to go be down there before Paro came, so that when he came to go to bathe, that he would have a conversation with him. And does it matter? Some people might not think so, but when you're taking the Word of God and you're just changing it to something totally different that it doesn't say, yeah, that matters, because the Word of God is holy. This starts this concept that God is holy. God isn't any God, right? That was the problem in the day of Abraham. There was lots of gods. Which God is yours? Maybe I'll just grab your God and add it to my 10 gods that I worship over here. No big deal, right? No, because the worship of the true God doesn't allow the worship of other gods, right? So right there you run into trouble, because God's holy. God is set apart. He's not one of many gods. Take your pick. He is the God, right? Just as Messiah is the King of Kings. He's not just another king in the earth, and there were some really good ones, but, you know, he's just another one. It doesn't work like that. He's the King of Kings, right? Nobody else. And this concept of holiness, kadosh, to be set apart, okay? It's set apart. It's something that's special and unique, unlike anything else. And it's not to be treated like everything else and made common. That is to defile it. When you take something that's holy, it's set apart, and you make it common, you've defiled it. Okay? And that's what people do with religion. You know, that movie is just a defilement of the Bible. It's taking something that's holy and specific and wonderful, and then just mixing it up and making it any way you want, and then here we go. We're going to turn it into something else. I'm sorry. It's the book is holy. The words are holy, right? The Torah is holy. It's set apart. His words made creation. When he says he worked 6 days and rested on the seventh day and hallowed it, he set it apart, made that day special. Then you got Christians over here following the Catholic doctrine. They don't even know the history of why they keep the Sabbath on Sunday, but it's easily found out. Just do your research. And they're following a day that the Catholic Church decided will be the holy day, knowing it wasn't the actual Sabbath, even in their own documents. They just said, we're going to make it the first day of the week will be the Sabbath instead of the seventh day, because we can, because we have authority to do that. And you just read up on the documents. You can see. They knew the difference. They knew it wasn't right, and they just did it because they could get away with it. Well, they defiled the Sabbath. Okay? That is, the first day of the week is not the Sabbath. He didn't say he rested on the first day of the week. He rested on the seventh day. But that's an example. People's passive attitudes is like, seventh day, first day, one day, any day you pick. Whatever. It's all good. Just make sure you rest on one. No. That's not taking something specific that's holy and then you make it into something that's vague and not specific and doesn't have to be accurate. It's the same thing people do with the truth. The truth is holy. The truth is fixed. It does not move. It is absolute. That is what it is, and it's immovable. But if you start to say, well, you know, just like the serpent did, God said if you eat, the day you eat of that fruit, you will surely die. That's the truth. That comes from the mouth of God. Then the serpent, who's got the split tongue, who tells lies, says, will you surely die? Right? Maybe you won't. Right? Word of God's the truth, not movable. Lies come from the serpent. Maybe it's movable. Right? Maybe we could interpret it a little differently. It doesn't work that way. So God is holy. His Torah is holy. His servants are holy. The priests. We learn about that in this week's Parashat. They're holy. They have to do certain things. If somehow they become blemished, they can't just serve just because they were born into this priesthood. No matter how long they've been doing it, at the point that they become blemished, there's things that they're not allowed to do. And it didn't matter who they were, because the service is holy. The servant's holy, so is the service. You see? And that's where people are disconnected. They want to be the children of God, but they don't want to be holy. They don't want to keep God's commandments holy and set apart. They don't want to honor God's words and obey His words. And yet they still want to be over here and serve Him and say, hey, we're your servant. But we're going to do it with a broken leg. We're going to do it the way we want to do it. And it doesn't work. Nadab and Abihu, they thought they'd do their own fire. Strange fire. It wasn't accepted to God. They were burned up, and it said, because I will be sanctified, right? Set apart, holy in the eyes of Israel, right? You won't just come and do whatever you want. So God's holy, His Torah is holy, His servants are holy, the service is holy, and then it goes into the offerings have to be holy. It can't be blemished. You can't just say, well, it says bring a lamb. I brought a lamb. Here he is, he's sick, he's got some disease, but it's a lamb, and that's what you asked for. It doesn't work like that. The details matter. What are we offering up? Every time we make a choice, we're offering up. If you say, oh, God doesn't care if I have a ham sandwich, yes, He does. Because that's not holy. He told you how to eat. He told you eating pork is not acceptable. That the food He set apart, made holy for us, is told to us. And the other is defiled. And so you're defiling yourself, you're defiling your body, you're sinning when you're not doing as God said. No matter who tells you with their split tongue it's okay, and no matter how much you want to believe it, just like Eve wanted to believe it because she wanted to do it. At the end, it was her own self-will. She blamed the serpent, but the serpent didn't make her eat it. She wanted to. She says, oh, it looks good for food, could make me wise. She wanted to sin, and so she justified her sin. And that's the same thing people are doing today. They do what they want, and then they justify it and try and say, well, that was God's will. This is how the Bible is, right? Even though it's not accurate, that's really what they want it to say, so they just say that that's what it is. And they justify it and teach others that that's cool. It's not cool. His times are holy, we see in this week's Parashat. Set apart times are holy. They're not movable. Those times are holy, and we don't change it. We don't add and change other things. You know, a lot of people celebrate Purim and Hanukkah and all these other different things. I'm sorry, those aren't in Leviticus 23. Okay? Those are not the feasts of God. They say, but this is a good meaning, and oh, it's about the Maccabees, or it's about this, and it's about that. I don't care about that. He says in Leviticus 23, these are my feasts, which you shall observe. Okay? That other stuff, those are man's feasts. To me, they're no different than the Christians who say that the candy cane is the shepherd's staff. And they can justify it and try and make up all kinds of stories and legends about how it's about Jesus, when anybody who studies the history of that stuff knows it's not. But they can still make connections, just like people can make connections to all these other days that Messianics or Jews have that aren't in the Bible. Okay? And yet they're all worshiping Him and doing them many ways with more effort than they do for the other holy days. I see them getting all the kids together and making a big show and dressing up for Purim and doing all this. I don't see him doing that for Shavuot. I don't see him doing that for Yom Teruah. I don't see him doing that for Yom Kippur. I don't see the kids getting all that excited for those days. You know, in the Christian culture, kids get excited, right, for Halloween and Christmas, right? And to me, it looks a lot like Purim and Hanukkah. Because they're getting dressed up, they're getting candy. I mean, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, they call it a duck. And you can say, oh, but wait, it's about this. And the Christians can do the same thing. They can say, oh, but Easter's really about the resurrection of Jesus. Doesn't matter that it's not. Doesn't matter that the story of Hanukkah, oh, it's about the miracle. Even in the book of the Maccabees, there's no miracle. That's not even in the book. That's not in the book of the Bible. It's just a legend that's made up outside the book of the Maccabees. You know? And yet people still go, no, but that's legitimate. Seems legitimate. You know, that's what it's about. That's accurate, don't you? You know? Christians and Messianics and Jews, they'll treat you the same way the Christians do. Don't you take away my Christmas. And then don't you talk about my Hanukkah. Kids love it. They get presents. They get their little tree with lights on it, and everybody's happy because you don't have to do without Christmas. Now you buy your Hanukkah presents, right? Even the retailers know, hey, we'll advertise it's a Hanukkah or Christmas present. You know, they put the two together because they see you're going to give gifts and you're going to have your little tree, and you know, you can get the kids excited. and all the other little fluff and justifications, they don't care. They're going to try and make their same money. Right? I mean, these are things we have to learn. What's the difference between something that's holy, that's actually set apart, like the holy days in Leviticus 23, and the things that are not holy? Right? When you make something holy that's actually common, it's just like taking something that is holy and making it common. See? When you elevate Hanukkah to the level of Sukkot, that's just like taking Sukkot and making it equal to Christmas or some other man-made day, Martin Luther King Day. I don't know. Take your pick. Doesn't matter. The fact is that Sukkot is holy. And discerning the difference between what's holy, what's set apart from God, and what isn't, right? That's about our judgment. That's what we have to learn. Okay? His times are holy. His Sabbath is holy. You can't say, well, we're going to do this Sabbath, or we're going to just move it, we're going to do something else, and all that. The same logic that doesn't work when you look at it in other things then comes back and is reapplied to other things that people are doing that they're justifying. The Messianics justify stuff. The Jews justify stuff, right? With the Talmud or the Mishnah or legends and of the Jews and all this commentary and stuff. But what's that have to do with the Torah? Because the Torah is holy. The Talmud's not holy. They got a little confused. That's where they run into trouble. They need to just get back to the Torah and remember that the Torah is holy and set apart as the Word of God. And that what the rabbi says is not the Word of God. And is not the same. They're confused between what's holy and what's not holy. What's lesser and what's defiling something that's holy. And it's the same thing with the Christians. They don't understand their faith and religion. They think that salvation is the whole goal of the Scriptures, not obedience. No, they think the New Testament then is greater than the Old Testament, even though the Old Testament's the foundation of the house. You know, and Messiah says to build your house on the rock, on the foundation. He said, if you would believe Moshe, you would believe me, if you believe Moses' writings. He says, because you don't believe Moses' writings, how can you believe the words I'm saying? But somehow they think, no, we believe your words, and no, we don't believe the words of Moses. That wasn't for us, or that was old, or that doesn't count anymore. It's just not true. It's all about understanding holiness, because we are commanded to be holy. For it says, be holy, for I am holy. Be you perfect, it says. You have to learn what's holy.